What is up, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Start, Build, Grow Show.
All right, what is up, everybody? So today you might notice this is a little different. Than we have myself and Kylisha Beasley. We are from the Roofing Academy, and we will be stepping in to host as guests today. Randy will be back next week for the next episode, but we have a super special guest today. As you know, this show is for a podcast that's geared towards entrepreneurs and leaders in the contracting space. And today it's really exciting because we have a guest who I think will bring a lot of really solid information to anybody who is an entrepreneur or leader in the roofing space or any space for that matter. She is actually Randy's sister, and I read over her bio before we started. I checked out the LinkedIn, and based off what I saw, I refer to her as like an entrepreneur extraordinaire. Is she's done a lot. She's really amazing. Just meeting her right now, but I can tell she's really amazing at what she does. And she's a venture investor focused on BIPOC founders. She's an award-winning CEO, finance and business exec, champion for investors as a tool for economic equity, and then a two-time TEDx speaker. So Danielle Shoots, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I know I just listed like some of the many things you've done in your background, but we would love to hear firsthand from you, your story, your background, and the journey it took to get where you are today as an entrepreneur.
It's a deep, long one, but I'll start with my career. So I'm a chief financial officer by trade. I became a chief financial officer for the first time when I was around 26 at the State Health Department here in Colorado. So about 11 years ago. So I've been a chief financial officer for the West Division of Comcast, for the Colorado Trust out here, which is a large philanthropic organization. I started my first company back in 2017, which was the Daily Boss Up. I now own 6 companies of my own. And one of those is a $50 million venture capital fund for investing in early stage, high growth companies here in Colorado. So finance background, went to CU Denver, born and raised here in Colorado. Randy's my older brother, so we grew up together in Colorado Springs in the house, and it's just been like a really wild ride. But I love business. I really love the fundamentals of business. We even say that in my venture capital fund, that we're old school venture capital, where we really get involved with the folks that we make investments in order to help grow and scale businesses. I like to actually pull levers in a profit and loss statement and understand the operations of a company and how we can make it more efficient or grow certain spaces of revenue, and have a lot of fun solving those puzzles. So just doing that kind of work really across the country at this time right now.
Cool. And with that venture capital work that you're doing, would you say, what really, I guess, was there a turning point that brought you to be more focused in that area? Is there something behind it that, you have your passion there?
Yeah.
Where does that all stem from?
Yeah, I mean, I had an investment portfolio at the Colorado Trust when I was the chief financial officer there. So it was about $600 million portfolio when I left there to start the fund. And I just realized that investment as a tool in our economy is so critical. And there's just so many businesses, industries, and people who are left out of private equity investing, which venture is just a sub asset class of a private equity investment. And that, sort of to keep growing economy in the country, we were going to have to really use private equity funds as strategic tools to grow and scale economies, to diversify who gets investments. It is a very non-diverse area for investments. There's very few funds that are run by anyone that looks like me. There are very few dollars that are controlled by anyone that looks like me, and the dollars don't make it to women and veterans and people of color. And so we really wanted to use it as a tool to start to create greater economic growth in Colorado, but also across the country. There's several industries. Like I had a $300 million supply chain and $1 billion capital portfolio when I was at Comcast. And that industry, like supply chain and contracting, roofing, everything that my brother's doing, is a system that just hasn't been innovated on and invested in the same way we invest in other industries that might look shinier. But there's so much room and space to really do great work. There's great space in those industries to create employee ownership models, which is phenomenal for business and for economies when we do that. And so there's just a piece of sort of the fundamentals of business that we also wanted to make sure that we were using innovative investment strategies, but also to sort of innovate on some of our most important industries that they're never going away. It's just a matter of keeping them efficient and moving.
Okay, yeah, and I guess you mentioned investing as an overlooked tool for, I guess, smaller business owners, correct? And so what would you say to someone who they're a small business owner and that's, kind of an intimidating area to look at or start considering for me, if I were a small business owner, that would be more of an intimidating area to start looking into and investing in. So what would be like your advice to people like when they're first getting started out considering investments in small businesses?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different types of investments, especially in small business. So depending on the type of business you are and what your goals are, but investment is an influx of capital and support in order to grow and scale a business. And so it is intimidating, but it also is the fuel source. I call it sort of venture is rocket fuel. If you go get a small business loan, that's a different kind of fuel source. And so I always think about it like if you're driving a car and you have the gear shift and you shift into certain gears based on how fast you want to go or where you want to go, or if you're going around a mountain or if you're going on a straightaway, right? Mm-hmm. And investing is the same way, and bringing capital into your business is the same way. And I think people are nervous to do that, just like folks are nervous to hire. And those are the two things that actually grow and scale your business faster than anything else. And it really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you aren't trying to, 10 times grow your business, you wouldn't want to take on a venture investor who's going to take some equity of your business. We do in our investments, so we take a percentage ownership in exchange for the check. We usually sit on boards and things like that, but there's a ton of private equity funds out there that are doing more work in my brother and all your industry, where it's revenue financing. So you give a piece of revenue to get that upfront capital as you grow and scale your business. And then I'm a huge fan of using the banking industry of what it needs to be used for. And I know that can be really nerve-wracking. The banking industry hasn't done a great job of reminding all of us that we are the customer and they actually really need us. And so to go into banks and to work with them, I actually think this is going to get easier. I think banks are realizing that we have a problem. If you don't have customers, we don't have an economy, because banks sort of are the fuel source of an overall economy in many ways. And so you're starting to see sort of different programs for small businesses, different programs for home ownership, which can be leveraged if you want to start a business, right? Like, we have to own things in order to build wealth, either as individuals or in our companies. And so bringing capital into that is really, really important if you're going to own something, because you can leverage ownership of something in order to get more capital, because wealth really moves around on paper. It's not the cash I give you, it's not the dollar bill I give you. It's really about, what is my business worth? What is my home worth? How can I leverage that to grow and scale? And so there's different sort of colors of capital, I call it, but I would encourage people to really look into what it means to bring in capital in order to grow and scale. I can just promise you it's slower, and you get to burn out a lot faster when you try to do it without some type of investment and sort of jump. Like, I know it's scary, but it's really important.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of really awesome information. I feel like you're full of a lot of knowledge in that area. That's awesome. What would you say, like, you may have already gone over, but what's like a common myth maybe you hear in your industry? What's something that's very commonly heard throughout your industry?
Yeah, I think that one of the fundamental things that I run into is people not wanting to give up a percentage of their company to an investor. And I think the myths around what that means, I think there certainly are investors that could take advantage, or maybe they have some investors like friends or family and that didn't go well. And the truth is that investors, like, my job is to invest. My job is to run a fund and my companies and to help where the supports are needed. But really the goal is, like, if you win, I win. So if somebody is an investor that takes a percentage ownership of your business, that's not a bad thing, because if I only own 10% and I'm going to make back 3 times my money when your business grows and scales, imagine what you as an owner are going to make back with the equity that you have on the table. So that's a barrier that I'm always trying to fight and try to explain and try to educate people on of what does it mean to take on somebody as a percentage ownership. And the other thing is that, again, you're the customer. So what can you negotiate beyond a check? We cut $5 to $1 million for the first round of any investment out of my fund. But what else does somebody want? Do they want a strategic CFO relationship? Do they want me to assign them an advisor to where they have a gap in their business? Do they want projections? Like what supports do you need? And you can get the same thing from a bank investment of a small business loan or a large business loan. You can do the same thing with a revenue financing deal from a private equity fund or a debt deal from a private equity fund. But really to remember that you're the owner of something. And so when you're the owner of something, you get to negotiate what you need. And all of this is so much harder if you try to do it by yourself. And I know my brother would tell you the same thing. He's phenomenal at building teams because he knows since the beginning of Elite Roofing and then the Academy, he's always done it with support and with support of people he really trusted. His best friend and my sister who runs Elite Roofing and all of that are people that he just really trusts because you need support. And if you can get an investor at the table who now has a dollar interest in making sure you do well, that's actually a good thing, not a bad thing.
Okay, that's a really good point to put it in that direction with including, an investor being invested in that growth of bringing on a good team and people to help you out. So I really like that perspective.
Yeah, I also agree with that. I like how you kind of brought that in as far as it being like a fear for most people. Most people are afraid of losing that little small percentage, but not actually seeing how it could actually be a positive turnaround for them and the investors. So like you said, if you win, I win, we both win. No one's losing in this deal. So that's amazing. I like hearing that. That's awesome.
Yeah. I have a saying like, are you fighting for 100% of zero or 15% of a million? Because that's the conversation that you're having, right? It's like, well, what's 100% of your company if your company's not going to grow and scale and you don't have what you need to do it and you're burnt out and you just decide to like walk away from it? What is it if you have 85, even 52% of a company that's now worth $100 million? So it really takes like vision and building a company takes vision, but so does sort of the financial model around what does that look like and how big do you want to be and what does that mean from what risks you have to take in order to build a team to get there.
Yeah, and like I think in your industry that must be a common challenge you see too, is getting people to look at numbers differently like that. Like you just said, you said, do you want to look at, was it 15% of a million or, or
Exactly.
like zero, so that's a really good point. And it's hard to get people to, I would imagine, I don't know, you could correct me if I'm wrong, that's probably a challenge, is getting people to look at numbers differently and see it that way.
Yeah, I always hear people, like probably one of the most common things that people say, especially women to me, is, oh, I don't do numbers. And I think that's systemic. I think we're trained that we don't do numbers. It's just not true. You might not have done numbers in the way they taught you in school and like your brain didn't work to show work the way that they wanted you to, but that's very different than not knowing numbers and not being able to like use them as a tool. Like I'm a storyteller, like I actually didn't know I would go into finance, very much a creative brain, so not artistic, but incredibly creative. And I just see numbers as puzzle pieces, right? When I look at numbers, I just see them as like, what's happening. They never tell you the story, but they tell you where to look, right? Or they, when you understand them, you can leverage them in certain ways. So for instance, like if you take on a small business loan, that's a debt product where you're paying interest. I always tell people if you're going to take on a debt product, you want to use that money for something that's going to generate revenue to pay it back, right? So when you think about numbers that way, where it's like, okay, that's the piece of the puzzle. If I pull this lever, it's going to get me where I want to go. And then how do I circle back to the fact that it's a loan? So if you don't have a plan on how you're going to generate more revenue with your loan, loan might not be the right product for you, but it certainly doesn't mean you should avoid all investment, right? It all depends on like what your goals are. And if you can tie numbers, including KPIs and measurements and goals to your numbers, then you really can build a fundamentally strong business, because when a number doesn't go the way you planned for it, you can easily go down a level into your operation and figure out, okay, like what's happening there? What's the consumer economics behind why that's not happening? What's happening with my customers to where that certain product we offer or this we're doing solar instead of panels, and we don't have the same margins on this as we do that. What could we do to increase margins over here? So understanding numbers in a way where it's like storytelling and really looking at it. And what I tell anyone is, like, I don't do any complicated math, and I'm considered to be, one of the best economists in the state. And it's not complicated. It's really about what happened the last 3 years, and how is that predictive of what's going to happen the next 3 years unless I do something a little different. What do I want to change? What do I want to keep the same? And then just going a layer deeper into your operations to really understand what's driving that number that you can see on the page.
Yeah,
I feel like that.
Oh, go ahead, Kai.
I was gonna say, I feel like that's like real universal for like all businesses across the board, not just like investing, but like I really feel like our audience, for instance, in the roofing industry could really dig a little deeper as far as finances go, because I realize too, like everything you're talking about right now is something that is actually common amongst most of like our members at the Roofing Academy. They come in with these same issues, and it's typically their finances. Like they don't have financial clarity, and like you said, you're like, I'm not even like, this isn't anything super complicated, you could do it. It's just, I think a lot of it is fear of unknown.
Yeah,
so
it's trained. Like that's the number one thing. It could be a tech business that I think is going to be worth $50 million next year, and the number one thing they'll tell me is the numbers scare people. And so I think it's like just really getting comfortable with the numbers, like getting comfortable with what a P&L is, like putting yourself through that. You don't have to do it. You get great bookkeepers, and I'm not an accountant, I'm an economist. So I don't, I have great accountants in my life that, can do the T's and the I's, but I really want to understand the story, and then looking at trends, like start there. Just like look at trends in your business for the past few years and be like, okay, well, there's an anomaly. And then ask yourself, like, why is that number sticking out? What happened that year in my business that made that number either better or worse on average over time? And so the law of averages is real, and it's really simple math. And so if you can start just thinking about that from a revenue. And in this industry, I was the construction CFO for Comcast, and so I'm very, very familiar with the industry. And in this industry, there are so many levers, actually, that you can pull when finances get tight, if you know your number or if you want to grow. And I often tell people you can actually make more money by asking yourself, what should you not do versus what should you do, right? And I think a lot of entrepreneurs are eager to add. And I say, like, get really focused, know what you're doing, and then take away before you add, right? Like if like the closet rule, I'm going to take one thing out of my closet before I put something new in there. Like think about your expenses the same way. Right? What can come off the table before you add something new? You do have to spend money in order to grow companies. That saying is very real. But you don't have to spend it just any kind of way. And some money can run a really long race, and some money is really short. And so thinking about like, what shouldn't I be doing? Like, where am I wasting money? Where is my fluff and my float? And then also just different scenarios. Like, what if this happens? What if I make $10 million in revenue next year? What if I make 2? What would I do? What decisions would I make? If you can get in front of those at the beginning of every year, it will really change the stress and pressure of the year, because you already have a plan. Okay, we only did $2 million in revenue. Here's my hiring plan. Here's the expenses I said I would cut if we didn't hit this number by Q1. So I think like strategic planning without numbers doesn't make a ton of sense to me, because the numbers will guide you. Did you hit it? Did you not? And if not, what did you have as a backup plan B, C, and D? If you didn't, and what'd you say you're going to spend your money on if you blow your numbers out of the water? Because having an investment strategy when you're dropping cash to the bottom line is also as important in planning for the future of a business.
Yeah, I like that. That's awesome. So I want to switch gears a little bit, but before we switch gears, I know we have to take a quick break. We want to thank all of our sponsors, our amazing sponsors of the Roofing Academy and the Start Build Grow Show. So real quick, we're going to just take a quick break and thank them.
JobLimits is a fully customizable back office solution.
Track leads, jobs, tasks from one easy-to-use software.
And with the largest ecosystem of integrated partners, if we don't do it, we have a friend who does.
Learn how the #1 back office system in roofing
can help you be efficient, be organized, be professional, and be profitable.
Are you looking to stand out with your proposal? Sumo Quote is the contractor quote that crushes the competition. It is the fastest way to build custom quotes that impresses clients and wins more work. It's one of those must-have technologies for roofing contractors, allowing them to sell faster, sell more, and sell smarter. Be sure to check them out at try.sumoquote.com/start-build-grow.
All right, so now we're back, and I wanted to switch gears real quick. Danielle is going to be joining us at the Roofing Success Summit, which we have been working really hard to get planned, and we have a bunch of an amazing lineup of speakers, and Danielle is one of those. And so I'm personally really excited to hear what she has to speak about. I did want to ask a question though. I wanted to ask you about visionary leadership. It's clear that you had to have some type of vision in your entrepreneurial journey. I know you had some type of vision of like what you thought your team was going to look like, what you thought your business was going to look like. Can you kind of go into a little depth about like what that visionary process looks like from a leader perspective?
Yeah, I would say all of my career has been about the ability to sort of see the end line, the vision. Like I have these really big visions. Like I can get very little detail and be like, okay, I know where we need to go. Like this is where we should head. For me, it's been about not getting too committed to the plan towards that vision, rather the vision itself, because your plan is going to change. And for me, it's about bringing really talented people to the table. And what I mean is not necessarily that they do spreadsheets better than anybody else. It's that they really have their own talent. They're going to bring something different. They're going to bring a perspective. They're going to balance me in ways that I need it. And that's really critical because I'm sort of a set, ready, go person. Not as bad as my brother, but close. And so I'm like, go, let's just go. I have this vision, let's just go. And I have to make sure that folks are there to sort of slow me down, think through details. You have to be the queen of the pivot, for sure. And I definitely am that. Like, there's never a moment where I'm like, well, this can't happen because that one thing that we thought we were going to do will go wrong. I'm so committed to the outcome once I see it. It's almost primal for me, if I'm being honest. Like, there's just no, like, letting up. I'm going to get it done. The ways in which I get things done is people, and that's why leadership is so important. Like, I really will build a plan around what people are good at. So I usually don't build a plan first and say, here's the thing. I'll say, here's the outcomes that I really want to see, and what do we all think about the plan, and where can you best be leveraged in order to get there, and what don't I know? And that's always been really critical for me. I think if there's one thing I've done really well, it's to build teams in my career and put people together that complement each other and both balance each other and challenge each other, because that's how we get really great outcomes. And I want folks to be motivated by working for me and with me. I have my team at the fund. Almost all of them, or maybe all of them, worked for me in other capacities in their career before, and then came with me to start this crazy venture fund and jump into this pool. And that's just a sign of like how strong the team is, because we're all taking on something new together. And so for me, it's about the people and their talent and how much I trust them and how loyal we are to each other, because I know none of us would want to fail the other person. And that's a different pressure even than in failing yourself, right? Like, I think we can let ourselves down much easier than we can other people, which I actually think is a superpower if you're a leader, right? If you can figure out how to like put all that lightning into a bottle where we all are like, well, I'm too tired today, but I can't let anything happen to this person on my team. I can't let anything happen to that person on my team. And when you sign the front of checks, it's a different pressure. You sign the front of checks versus the back of checks, and you're paying payroll, and it's just a different pressure. And you have to know that it's not all with you. And so how you build your team is going to be critical in making sure that you're not carrying all of that and that you're not making every decision, because that can be crippling to a leader, which is then crippling to a business.
Yeah. And I guess my question is, like you've mentioned, bringing on people, it sounds very much about what we hear from Randy, bringing on people who have, strengths that you don't, so that you can take off with the vision. And I don't know, maybe it was something maybe it's a strength you've had from the beginning, is bringing on the right people, or is that something that you was a challenge that you had to, overcome and figure out? I would imagine it would be hard to figure out exactly what is that quality you're looking for and you're executing on the right person. And so has there been challenges in figuring out how to bring on the right people and just curious
Yeah,
how that's been for you?
that's a great question because the truth is I'm intuitive and deeply empathic, and so I just really trust my gut. I do the same thing with investing, and someone who trusts their gut, it's going to have hiccups. You're going to get it wrong. And so for me, it's less about the initial decision and more about what you do with it in order to build great teams. As soon as you realize somebody's not working out, you have to stop the bleeding, like for them and for you and for your company, right? So for me, the greatest mistake you can do in building a team is to let a team member who's not working stay one day longer than you should have. And so I trust my gut. It usually works out really good. But it doesn't always. And there's been numerous times in my career, from the fund, which I just started last year, all the way back to the first time I was a CFO, where I just didn't get it right. And the people that work for me and with me become my family, but that's after we've sort of established our relationship in building this business together, right? And I think that sometimes can get twisted up in the opposite direction. And so you won't see me hiring like all my friends, but you will see that my team will become my friends and my family, really. Like my team that's with me now is my family. I've known them in some capacity or other for years, and I had less risk tolerance for the fund, so there was less like new people that I wanted to bring on while I started this, because I knew I needed folks that I knew were going to be able to, like, building a fund is hard and it's a lot of work and it's nearly impossible, and most people don't do it and don't get very far. And so we really wanted to make sure that it was just already a team full of people I knew could hit the ground running. And I run really fast. I work a lot. I love to work. I've worked as play since I was a little girl. Like, I can go back to being in second grade and being like, I wrote plays and made all the neighborhood kids audition, and we performed for the parents at the end of the summer. So like, that's always been who I am, is someone who plays as work and works as play. And so you've got to have a little bit of that spirit, otherwise I'll wear you out. But these are all things that are just really important to tell people. And I don't think you can hire good teams if you don't know yourself.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't know who you are as a leader, I actually don't think it doesn't matter how good you can pick them, how good your gut is. If you don't know who you are, you actually don't even know what you're hiring for. Because if you're not saying, hey, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm great at, here's how I can be transparent, here's how I set expectations. Anyone I've even fired, I would let anyone talk to them. Not just people that work for me, but anyone that's ever worked for me, whether it worked out or didn't work out. Because what they'll never say is that I wasn't transparent and honest, and that I didn't try, and that I didn't give feedback, and that I didn't accept feedback. I accept it all the time, right? Like, I always say my chief of staff is really my boss. That's the truth. Because I need a check and balance with somebody, no matter how high up I go. And so if you don't know yourself, good luck with trying to hire the right teams, because your energy is at the center of how people are going to respond every day.
I absolutely love that. Like, if you don't know yourself, I feel like that's actually like across the board for all of life, right? Like, if you don't know yourself, you don't really know a lot of what you're doing, That's awesome. So I guess that kind of goes into my next question, which is about character. What type of, like, I know personally, like, working with your brother, I've been working with your brother for like 6 or 7 years now. And so, he's huge on character. Like, you find the good character, you can train the skill, but you can't train character. And I absolutely love that quote. And I even now have taken that into my own personal life for like friendships. Now I'm just like, oh, the character doesn't match, it's a no-go for me. So like, my next question is in regards to leadership, like characteristics. What characteristics do you feel like is necessary for that leadership role, and even into like, any type of like who's on your leadership board, and like what characteristics were you specifically looking for when you were hiring for that?
Yeah, that's such a good question, and I think it's ever evolving for me too. As I go in certain directions and reach different heights and try on different things in my own career, I'm always adding to that sort of slate. It's getting really crisp and precise for me over time of like what exactly do I think is involved in it, for at least for me, if you're going to be a leader and work for me and with me. So I think, number one for me is curiosity. And that goes for anybody, whether you're leading or not. But if you can be a curious leader, you can be a great leader. If you can ask questions without needing to know everything, if you can let other people make decisions because they're better at that decision than you are, that's really great. I think self-awareness is one, but without self-management, that's one I've added over time. And I always said self-awareness, but self-awareness and self-management, like a real plan to sort of work on yourself, on the things that you want to get better at, and then a real plan to accept the things that are just really true to who you are, so that you're not carrying them around like this brick on your shoulder that you're constantly like dropping on people's toes, right? Like that's how I describe that energy of sort of guilt and shame and, oh, I'm not good at that, but I also don't want to ask for help because I don't want anyone to know I'm not good at it. So it's self-awareness and self-management. I don't know many great leaders who aren't fun. So if you can't bring fun into it, I don't know how to be a great leader without creating at least some sense of fun and family and getting along and integrity. I love candid honesty. So I think clarity is kindness is what Brene Brown says. And so my team knows like our job is to say the thing and get it out of the way. And let's work through it, and let's be clear with one another and not try to dance around thinking we're actually helping when we're hurting. There's no savior complex. If you want to work with me, we're just not doing that. Everyone is going to be accountable for themselves. We can help each other. We can step in when someone's having a hard time, a hard day, a hard year. But we're not going to do the savior complex thing. We're not going to make excuses for repeated bad performance or for treating each other poorly or any of those things. And so I think that's another one where it's like if you carry a ton of savior complex as a leader, it's going to be hard. You're going to get disappointed a lot. And your energy is going to be distracted in a lot of ways. So I think those are the things that I look for. I think there's a lot that can be taught if you are willing to learn and you have that curiosity. I think people can grow into it. And then I think there's some folks who just weren't built for it, and that's fine too. And I think that we have to accept that about everybody, that somebody might want to sit in their computer all day, every day, not talk to anyone, but they still add this amazing value. It just depends, on what you're looking for.
Yeah. And I like that when you're talking about like the savior complex and then like the accountability within your team and your leadership team. And it kind of makes me backtrack a little bit to where you were talking about if someone is not a good fit for your team. I love how you said like you will not let it go past one day of them not being a good fit. And I would say, as someone who has worked under a lot of leaders and worked for different companies, large and small, I think that can sometimes be really toxic when you let someone stay one day longer than they should when they shouldn't be. I mean, it affects your culture immensely, and it can really impact your leadership team as well. And so just listening to you talk, I can tell it seems like all those everything you're doing with bringing in right leadership and people into your organization is there's a lot of that I would think helps a lot with your culture in your organization. And I think that gets overlooked a lot, how important culture is and how easy it is for one person to just throw it off for everybody. And so it's just, I don't know, just kind of wanted to backtrack that and just point out like how important I believe that is for leadership and get your guys.
Culture is the business. Like you just can't get where you want to go if you don't know your culture, if you haven't established your culture, if you don't hold yourself accountable to the culture that you've established. And you can't be disappointed if you've set expectations, right? Like if you have the right expectations and everyone's on the same page, then you can move forward. But so many people get disappointed because of the things they never even told anybody they were expecting, right? And so I think it's all about really setting culture, being honest. We do strategic planning together as a team every year. We just finished that in December before I went on break. So it's really important. Like we share goals, People have their individual goals underneath it. But everyone knows my budget. Everyone knows where we're going. Everyone has this sort of transparent look inside the business because you're a part of it, right? This is not just me. And so to hold any of that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. It's like, especially if you're small, right? Like my team on the fund is 7. And so let's do this together. Like, I don't know everything. Like, what do we got to get done? And here's the things I know we got to get done. How are we going to get there? What goals should we set for ourselves? How do each of you want to contribute to that? Going forward, and I can tell you, like, with certainty, it has never ever worked out for me to keep somebody longer and try to get them better once my gut knows it's not working, right? So it's that same gut that you brought them on with, because that's the truth. If that gut's saying like this is not working, you gotta move. You gotta cut and run, and you gotta do it with love, because it's not good for your company, and it's not even good for the person who's in that. Like, if they're not doing well, they're not happy anyway.
Yeah, I think of preserving the culture. That you got to preserve your culture, and kind of keep it intact. And something once again that we do, like I know that Randy implements, is the hire slow, fire fast. Meaning, like, like you said, just cut it off. Like one day, it's just, you got to cut it off. And I know when I was at Elite, I watched people come and go fast. I seen, and it just wasn't a good fit for the culture. Overall, we all would agree too. Like, yeah, this person was kind of putting a dent in our culture of how things were run. And you always knew when someone was a good fit for the culture when everything, it's like when someone gets hired on or gets added to the team, and everything is still running pretty much the same, but now you just have this added yeah, exactly. It's like, wow, we got one more person to the team, and now we're all moving even quicker in the same direction. So you always know when it's the right hire, almost like you said, right away. Like, you can feel it, and you can instantly feel it when it's also the wrong hire, when that energy is not the same. You could feel it switch off. So
My brother is actually an incredibly gentle soul of a person, right? I don't know if people know that, but like he really just wants to do the right thing by people and for people. And I would bet he would tell you that he had to learn that lesson the hard way a couple times too, right? Like, I think in the beginning, you're just your heart. You want everyone to be okay and to make it. And like the thought of cutting someone's fuel source off for their life, for their family, to pay their bills is just excruciating. It's excruciating. And so you get better over time. You build up the calluses or the scars, I don't know which one it is, to be able to do it faster and quicker. But it certainly is the hardest part of the job. But if you do good planning, and if you are transparent and you set expectations and you circle back to them and measure them, then that conversation gets a lot easier because you've been on the same page the whole time.
yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
well, there's so much information I feel like to be learned from you. Like, for hours until
No, it's like we can do another episode of this. Yeah.
Randy been hiding you. I'm newer, so it's I maybe just miss out. So, but I guess I just you have a lot of knowledge, and so I know, Kai, maybe you have another burning question. I know I do. I just kind of want to know. It seems like there's been you've had a lot of growth to get to where you are now, and so I'm curious. If you could look back on 10 years ago, like, what would be advice you would give yourself entering into your however many years ago it's been entrepreneurial journey? Like, what's like the biggest advice you would give your younger self that someone else could implement in their journey?
Yeah, I think that the thing that we don't talk enough about in entrepreneurship, because it's a brutal game. It just really is. It's a lonely game, and it can be unbelievably crushing in that loneliness at times, and where you sit inside of your head. And so wherever you go, you're going to take you with you. And I wish I had really understood that to spend my energy trying to be something different in my work than I am as a mom and a wife and anything else that I was doing in my life is not efficient. Like, it's just not efficient. So like, who am I at my core and my center, and how close can I play to that in every space I'm in my day, so that I am energized, because rest is one thing, energy is a whole other thing. And what are you good at, and how much of your day are you spending doing that? And when you can hire somebody, even if it's a contractor for 10 hours a week, you give them the crap you're not good at, and you trust them, because that pays back over and over and over again energetically. But if you don't know what that thing is, and you need to control everything, like, this is just a brutal game to play. And so I think really knowing who you are and really understanding like what lights you up, right? Does taking a walk rejuvenate you, or does it make you want to take a nap, right? Does eating at certain times of the day rejuvenate you, or does it make you want to take a nap? Like, I really think about my entire day that way. Every 15 minutes, like, what do I need? Like, what do I need right now? I don't want to be on meetings at 8 o'clock in the morning. My team knows that. I know that. So for the most part, we don't do that. We don't do 8 o'clock meetings. I'm not productive. The meeting's not going to be as what I want it to be. Energetically, I'm not going to set the tone I want to set for the day. And it just takes time to sort of learn those things and own them and be okay with it and sort of speak it out loud. And then when you're going through things, like, you have to talk to people about that. Like, that, you can't do it all in isolation, because you sit in your head and you don't sleep, and that is a compounding negative impact on whatever you're trying to build when you're not resting, you're not eating, you're overstressed, and you're not sleeping, which I know every entrepreneur goes through this. That compounds on itself in a way where you can really drive your business into the ground faster than spending money the wrong way, or not getting that customer, or anything else that you do. So it's like, how are you finding the space within yourself to be yourself and to operate as close to the best as you can, because that is critical to you being able to grow and scale a business. You have to like it. You have to enjoy it, because there's going to be so much that you have to do that you don't like. So you have to like the way your day is set up. And that's the thing about entrepreneurship, is that you're on all the time, but you get to decide. Like, how does that look for you? What does your calendars look like for you? Take Wednesdays off instead of Saturdays if you need a day in between, versus like, just take 4 days a week to work, and whatever makes sense to you and your team, like, do that. Like, don't get stuck in the structures that you left because you left for a reason, or you started a business for a reason or for a passion. But we get stuck in these structures as if we still work for other people, but then we take on all the pressure that we work for ourselves. And so let go of what you can from those structures once you're out on your own.
Nice. Yeah. One last question. I know you mentioned about, letting it out and talking to someone. Would you say that a mentor or some type of guidance or a coach is necessary in really thriving as an entrepreneur? And do you have a coach or mentor?
100%, especially as an entrepreneur. But I've had coaches and mentors my entire career. And the truth is, it's not formal. Like, I've never gone into a formal mentoring program and got a mentor that way. But sometimes if I did a year-long fellowship, I'd get a mentor or a coach. But I have an executive coach, I have a meditation coach, and I have, one of the greatest mentors in the world is the chair of my investment committee, who I came into my life last year. So there's people who have been along for a really long time, and then there's people who are new, who have really just changed my life with helping me work on me. And so the answer is yes. And then my other thing is, I have actually learned more by mentoring other people than I have even having a mentor. So find somebody to mentor. It doesn't matter what you think you don't know. Sitting there and working that out with somebody and having someone that you can sort of, hey, here's what I do know, and let's process that. You will be shocked when you leave those meetings going oh my gosh, I don't even do that. I need to start doing that. Or, oh my gosh, it clicked for me what we need to do in that situation in my own business or with myself. We have an easier time doing for others than we do for ourselves. Most humans do, and that's a really beautiful thing that I don't think our society really celebrates in the way that we're going to have to as we move forward as a country. And so let's celebrate that. We really do want to do good for each other and for the world. And so how do we do that? How do we step into that for an hour a week in some way, if not more?
I like that.
Nice.
Well, I feel like this episode was just full of many golden nuggets. I don't know, Kai, if you would agree, but if you have anything left in you, do you have, every episode we do a golden nugget. Is there anything, top of your list that you would like to, just offer as advice out there to, anybody in their journey with entrepreneurship?
Yeah, I have so many, right? And I think even the way I talk, I sort of talk in parables. So hopefully folks got some of those. But, I think in entrepreneurship specifically, when I think about it, it's that like, if it's a really bad day and you feel like you're not supposed to do it, you're still on the right track. If it's a really great day and everything's clicking, you're still on the right track. Like, that's what it is. It's a roller coaster ride. It's the ones who make it just get back up. They just get going. And so whatever you can do to say, I'm focused on the thing. Like, I don't know if you know anything about dance. My daughter's a dancer. She's a ballerina. And when you're spinning like this, if you can just find a place on the wall that you're always bringing your head back to, you won't get dizzy. So if you're doing 7 spins, which is how I describe entrepreneurship on your tippy toes, doing 7 spins, if you can find a place on the wall, you'll both keep your balance and you won't get dizzy. You won't have to lay down. You won't have to sit down. You won't have to just find what's the thing that you are trying to do and to get accomplished. For me, I did this with an executive coach a couple years ago, and I know that I want to grow wealth and grow leaders. Like, that's the impact I want to have. And so that's my centering point in everything that I do and in how dizzying this gets, and how busy this gets. I took 85 flights in the year 2022. Like, just wild. It was a really hard year. And so it's like, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What's the legacy you want to leave? And I'm not talking about titles. I'm talking about the what. What is it that they would say you did? With your business and with your life and with your legacy, and find that point and just whip your head back around to it whenever you need to, when it starts to get too dizzy.
I love that. Having that center point. So whatever that is for you, holding on to that. I'm definitely going to take that for myself. If no one else gets anything, I will take it for myself. I got to have my center point. Because life is crazy. Like, I don't go through like 85 flights in a year, but I've definitely, like, I feel like I move 1,000,000 miles per minute just because, like, I have this goal, but sometimes I forget to look back at my center point and like remember. Like, you get so far down the road and you're like, I forgot what the heck am I doing this for? Like, why am I doing 1,000,000 things in 1 minute? And then you're reminded of the why. So I love that. Thank you, Danielle, for that.
Of course, definitely. All right. So yeah, this was a really great episode, and we really appreciate you coming on, Danielle. And Kai, I don't know if you want to mention RSS again. Danielle will be there.
Yes. So make sure, if you haven't already gotten your tickets, make sure to get your tickets. If you are in need of help in any type of way, feel free to DM me, Kylisha Beasley on Facebook, or you can email me at Kylisha at the Roofing Academy. I definitely want to get anyone who wants to get there. So don't let financial constraints be the reason why you don't show up. I will work something out with you. We definitely want you guys to come in here. Danielle, she's going to be amazing. As you can tell from the podcast, she's going to be an amazing speaker, the event. And then we have an amazing lineup as well of other speakers. So I'm really excited to get people there. If you weren't there last year, oh my gosh, you want to be there this time. I promise you. It was like everyone was lit on fire when we left that place. So you definitely want to get there.
It's ramping up, and we've just, like Kai said, we've got a killer lineup of speakers, and you can come and see Danielle in person at the Roofing Success Summit, and it's roofingsummit.com is where you can get your tickets as well. So, all right. Well, thank you so much. We hope you all have a great rest of your day, and thanks again, Danielle.
Thank you. See you in a few weeks.
Bye.